So we're here at Ventnor Botanic Garden today, and this video is just going to be a random collection of things we saw while we were on visit here today. So the first thing is not botany at all, it's zoology. And here we've got some blue dragonflies mating. So we're going to walk underneath what's probably the largest fig tree I've seen in this country. We are in a very, very southern edge of Great Britain. We're on the south side of the Isle of Wight, so it's about as warm and mild a climate as you get in the UK. And look at the figs, look at that. So those are the winter figs. Fig trees have 2 crops per year, so those are the ones that have overwintered and are now developing the fruit. There'll be another crop that develops and fruits in October, and I imagine probably it's mild enough here that they do get both crops of figs off this tree. It's actually not just one tree, it's several. So we've got some trees here, but this is obviously the oldest one here. Let's see if I can just adjust the... So that's a really, really old, tangled tree trunk of figs. One thing I have noticed on all of my outdoor stuff here in the Isle of Wight is the bees appear to be doing better here on the island than they are on the mainland. So I don't know what they're doing right here on the island that we're doing wrong. The bee population here seems healthier than I've seen back at home. So here we've got a plant called Carpobrotus edulis. Now I've seen the relative of this one on seashores back at home, which has bright pink flowers. This is the edible cousin of the same plant. Supposedly when these flowers have finished, this fruit underneath here ripens and becomes a fig-like fruit. Obviously I'm not going to try and pick any of these today because I'm just visiting this garden, and we're just here to look. This tree, which I initially took to be something related to a white beam on account of it had clusters of white flowers and the underside of the leaves is white. I look at the tag on it, it's Olearia, which is in the Compositae, which is daisy family. So let's just have a look at those flowers in closer detail, and if we look, we are looking at little daisies on there. So there we go. So quite unexpected really to find a tree that is a member of the daisy family. How about that? We've got a nice specimen here of a hardy palm, and of course we know what we could do with these seeds, don't we? If you check one of my other videos, I collected some seeds from this and germinated them. So this plant we're seeing a lot of here in the south of the Isle of Wight is Echium, and it's a towering plant. I have a feeling this is one that we know the family of, but as only a herbaceous little plant. We're going to have to look that up later, but it's absolutely teeming with bees, which is lovely. It's a fantastic sight to see. I love to see lots of bees, but the bees are really enjoying this plant. And you can see why, actually. Look at the flowers. Those tubular type flowers are just saying welcome to the bees. And of course, when they're so densely packed as this, the bees can just fly around, hardly expending any effort to get from one flower to the next to collect their nectar. This plant here is interesting in the way that it's dealing with the bees. Let's just have a look. The bees actually have to climb right inside the flower, and they have to force that top part of the flower up in order to get in to get the pollen. And in a minute we'll have a look and see why it's doing that, why the plant is making the bee work so hard. So let's have a look here. So when we lift up that part there we go, look, there we go. So the reproductive parts of the flower are underneath that hood there. So when the bee is forcing its way underneath there, so it's forcing the bee to come into contact with either the pollen bearing parts of the plant or the female parts of the plant which are receiving the pollen. I imagine that's probably dependent on the maturity of the flower, that it will have a phase where it releases the pollen and then another phase later on where it accepts pollen. And what we've got here is some species of toadflax, which, if we looked in a previous video of mine, has these little snapdragon type flowers that open up like a mouth. Now let's see if we can actually see how this plant, similar to the other plant across the way which we just looked at, let's see if we can see how this plant is going to exploit the bees visiting the flowers. So there's a bee there, and it's trying very hard to get to the flowers where they've already dropped the petals. No, that bee is too big to visit, but there's one there that's actually going right inside the flowers, forcing them open, and in doing so it's getting pollen dabbed on its back. I wonder if it's this I can smell. Yes, this Torbay palm is what I'm smelling a great deal of today, and the bees are loving it too, but it's got a sort of fragrant, floral, lemony, citrus sort of scent to it, which is permeating the whole gardens actually. Keep catching wafts of it as we walk through. It's I can't quite decide whether it's pleasant or not. It's one of those smells that's nice when you catch a little waft of it, but a bit overpowering when you smell it all the time. So here's something definitely would not thrive in my garden. Prickly pear cactus, obviously not just been planted out here for the summer. This has been established. Oh, look, a little lizard. Let's just have a look at that little lizard while we're there. Obviously that lizard is feeling pretty well protected right now, because it knows I'm not going to stick my hand in there to try and grab it. So where were we? Prickly pear cactus, complete with ripe prickly pear fruits, which I am not going to attempt to pick, because the spines from this little thing get worked into your skin, and it's like invisible splinters that you can never find and get out, and it's just pain for days or weeks. So there we go, further evidence that the climate here is rather mild. Frosts are probably fairly gentle or rare. And there goes that lizard again, look. Lizard seems to be pretty much immune to those thorns. What a lovely thing to see. Just here we've got a plant that's known as pineapple broom, and the curious thing about it is that the flowers, I guess you might think it's the flowers that have given it the name pineapple broom because of their shape, but actually when we have a sniff of those flowers, they've got a sort of fruity, I guess almost pineapple-ish scent to them. This tree here, amazing bark on it. I believe this is a cork bark oak. So this is the kind of tree that traditional corks were cut from. If we have a look down here, here's a piece of bark that's fallen off a rotten old log from it. And yeah, it's got that kind of springy, corky texture, because it is cork. In the pond here they have turtles. I wonder if these are left out here all year round. I think they'd be a bit crunchy for you. I am continually impressed with these echiums. 20 feet tall, I reckon, the tallest one here. So I guess if you were a beekeeper and you live in the Isle of Wight or a south coastal area, it would probably be worth planting some of these in your garden if they would survive, because they pack a lot of flowers into a relatively small square footage. And I'm not the only one that's impressed with them. Absolutely humming with bees. Of course, you know why bees hum, don't you? Now here's something just a little bit interesting. We've looked mostly at all of the plants that were deliberately planted here, but even on the weeds there's something interesting to see. So this is sow thistle. It's a type of thistle-like plant with quite fleshy leaves, otherwise known as milk thistle. And if you've got rabbits or guinea pigs, they love eating this plant. But have a look down here at what's happened to these leaves. These leaves have been attacked by something called a leaf miner, and it's a little grub that lives inside the leaves, in between the top and bottom surfaces of the leaves, and it chews away at the inner parts of the leaves and then pupates inside the leaf and turns into a flying insect of some sort. And you can actually see sometimes with these tracks, they start off really narrow, and as they wind along they get wider and wider, and that's because the insect, as it was chewing its way through the leaf, was growing. So that's leaf miner tracks. So thanks for joining me today on this kind of random little trip through Ventnor Botanic Gardens. We haven't really covered more than a fraction of the plants and sites that are here, and I don't think I've actually seen it all, so I'll be coming back here another day. Thanks for joining me. I hope to see you again soon.